do you want to start by introducing yourself a little bit?
Sure. Okay, so my name's Gwen Paul. I am currently a manufacturing engineer for an optics company. So we make lenses and mirrors and anything that has anything to do with light. Um, I graduated with a degree in physics and then went into engineering after college. I sort of always knew I was going to go into engineering, but the school that I chose didn't have a specific engineering program. So I selected physics knowing it was kind of a broad, it was going to cover the bases pretty well. Now I live in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, which is where I grew up. So I'm fortunate to be back here. And I have 2 dogs and a cool fiance.
We are a very dog-friendly club, if you haven't noticed. So we always.
She's running around, so she might come pop in.
So does anyone have any questions that they want to get us started?
I think I'm going to ask the basic question. What really led you into your career? What was like your start, I guess? Were there any women in your life that really inspired you? Any role models? Anything like that that kind of led you into the field that you're in right now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously my mom is a huge influence in my life. She was always a very hard worker. She was the breadwinner in our family. And like growing up, it inspired me to be independent and aware of the fact that a woman can't do anything and she will do anything. So right off the bat, I knew I was gonna do whatever I wanted to do in my life, and I just had to find a little passion and follow that. And then in high school, I was fortunate enough to have a physics teacher who pushed me to actually pursue a career in STEM because, you know, there's so many options when you're in high school, right? You have athletics, you have friends, you have everything you could ever think about, and you don't really have a defined path, or you don't really know what your even interests are. And I had no idea, but he made me aware of my real ability to want to solve problems. So, you know, it's really easy to give up or say you don't know the answer to something. And in high school, I still just didn't want to accept that. I wanted to figure out what the answer was. Now, I'll tell you right now, most of the time I still don't know the answer, but I had the desire to find it. And I think that my high school physics teacher really showed me, like, if you really want this, you have that desire that'll get you there. So I went into college as a physics major and then ended up finishing, but I don't think I would have done it without him.
Thank you. That was really great, and really great to show that anyone could be a role model to a woman in STEM, whether it's man or a woman. So I think I have a question, actually. What is your favorite part of your job now?
That's a great question. So I would say it's solving a problem that I've failed on for several weeks. So everyone asks me like what it's like to be an engineer, and it's sort of harsh to say, but it's a lot of failure, right? So you're failing multiple iterations until you figure out that one thing or something that will help the other problems solve themselves. And that final solution, there's nothing like it. You know, it's a home run. It's everything you've been working for a very long time, and you finally get together. Whether it's a group doing that or yourself just finding one simple fix or one simple O-ring that'll solve all your problems. It keeps me going into work every morning, even though there's several weeks the night before where I'm just angry.
So would you have any advice for people who, oh, sorry, Michelle, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I was just going off of what Bella was saying. So like, can you just like go over like, what do you do like on a daily day for your job?
Yeah, absolutely. So day to day, I am designing and manufacturing lenses or mirrors for various companies. So like we work with all the top tech companies you can think of right now. AI is really big, so we're doing a lot of stuff for Facebook's AI company and Google's AI company, and they're all just prototype developing lenses. So they'll come to us and say, hey, we want to make this lens. We're not going to tell you what it's going to do because everything's a secret, but can we talk this through with you? And they'll either come to us with a design or come to us with some questions with a design, and then we will make, manufacture, and send them those cards. Most of the time, they know what they want. They give us the specs. We work with them. A lot of the time, they come to us with things that are impossible to make, and it's just some engineer that clicked a bunch of buttons and doesn't know that that's not even physically possible. So we'll have a conversation with them about that. And then we work with them most of the time until the project's complete, and then they send it off to someone else for like mass manufacturing for more of a prototype shop. Day to day is just 90% of the time I work on what's called a diamond turning machine, which is a really precise lathe. And I didn't know what a lathe was until I started working. So it's basically just a 3-axis machine. You've got a spindle, and well, sometimes it's 3. You've got a spindle and a Z-axis and an X-axis. And you can make almost anything you want out of that, to those 3 combinations. And so I work with a really precise version of that makes very specific, very accurate parts. Most of the time, I'll be on the machine all day, or I'll be getting a program from our head engineer, my boss, or I'll be waiting for a part to finish and cleaning and inspecting it. I would say the most important part of my job is inspection, which is funny because, you growing up, you go through labs and courses in college, and the cool part of the lab is doing it, right? The not fun part is writing your write-up and inspecting every sort of detail. But it turns out those are the things that matter the most, right? If this lens doesn't focus at the correct focal point, it's not going to work for them. So I have to have that data to back it up. And I've learned more about metrology in this job than anything. And I think that's maybe one of the most underrated parts of engineering is data, metrology and data collection.
Emily, do you have a question?
So you say you also make mirrors too?
Yeah, we do a lot of mirrors. A lot of those are like telescope related. They'll just focus light back towards something. I did a project for actually a company in New Jersey that was making these giant projector lenses that were ridiculous. They're just huge, and I think they were for movies. Almost all of our clients don't want to tell us what they're doing, but usually it's pretty clear what their goal is, so you can sort of infer what's happening. The mirrors are the coolest ones, I think, because you turn something that's just this aluminum block into an accurate and really precise mirror. We do jobs for companies that send stuff into space with NASA, and it's cool to see them start off as a block of aluminum and end up as this really accurate, really pristine piece of metal. I wish I should have brought something home so I could show you guys, but if you Google a telescope mirror, we make a lot of those.
So it's more of that rather than like the average like mirror you stare at in your own room.
Yeah, so the accuracy of the surface that we create is what makes that mirror, right? So if you have, it's called surface finish. If you have a really accurate surface, there's almost no defects on it. And the diamond tools that we use are what create that, because they shear really well. And so, I don't know what your average at-home mirror would the surface finish would look like. But I can tell you that when I make a mirror and then I look at myself in the mirror, I think I probably should have put more moisturizer on in the morning. Like, they're incredibly accurate.
That's really interesting. Are there any other like household materials that would have mirrors like that?
Let's see. I mean, like, a lot of electronics use sensors, which often you focus light. They would need a mirror like that to focus light elsewhere. but not necessarily in your home. I don't think anything specific. You know, maybe in 10 years when we all have AI goggles, I could claim that, but we're not quite there yet.
Kind of tying into that, what do you think is probably one of the most interesting things that you had the opportunity to work on or develop in your career?
Yeah, I think I can't say the company, but we worked with a company on some of their driverless cars, and we made these cool little parts that just like spun around super fast on like a specific axis, and then there was a parabolic lens put on top of that axis, and it spun around. I guess it shot light back and forth, sort of like that. I don't actually know exactly how it worked, but the detail in which we completed that project was just really cool. I couldn't even believe some of the stuff we were making. And then when the coolest part is when the company comes back to us and says, "Hey, this worked really well. We're really excited about this. You know, we're going to move forward with the project." But specifically, that one was extra cool. It took, I don't know, a year of just design engineering before we started manufacturing stuff. And then watching them go through. So the first part of that project, the part was actually flat. It wasn't a parabolic shape. And then, you know, we sent them several of those. They tested them. They come back to us and they say, "Okay, no, it looks like we need to make this shape, but let's do 3 different sets." So like 3 different equations for your parabolic shape. And we did all 3 of them. We sent them to them. They're all like just slightly different, like something it wouldn't even change the answer on a homework equation, but it changes the distance in which the light focused. And it was cool to watch. You know, you think about some giant company and they're coming out with these insane engineering ideas and concepts, and it just seems so daunting, right? Like, how do they get there? And I got to see it go from little tiny baby steps and move forward. It's really incredible. You don't recognize how many little steps go into that process. It's really so many people have a little hand in that design, and it's cool to watch it finally finish out.
One thing that you mentioned before was that engineering is a lot of failure. Do you have any advice on how you deal with that failure and how you are able to keep working towards that solution?
Yeah, I mean, that was my biggest shock coming out of college, right? So you go from a test where you have to be right, your answer is correct, or your work is correct, and maybe you mess something up along the way, but it's finite. And I think my boss really did a good job of showing me that that's not how the world works. We're not right all the time. And that was hands down the most shocking thing to me. I didn't realize how much failure went into it. But I think that the motivation to continue each time is that each time you either get a little bit closer to your answer, or you're almost there, or you're way off, and you just have to laugh and say, "All right, well, that was a mistake. Like, I missed a minus sign somewhere. It's stuck in space. I'm gonna let that one go." But each day watching a small amount of improvement is really, really important. You have to recognize, like, some of these things there's a reason no one's done it before. There's a reason not a lot of people go into engineering. It's because there's a lot of failure involved. But the end result is always worth it. And it's always cooler than you thought it was going to be because of how many failures you had to get there.
That's some really great advice. Does anyone have any other questions? Just trying to go around the room. You guys are so quiet today.
Okay, I could ask another one. So this is kind of in another area, but like what advice would you give to like a high schooler like us or like and people, women in college like who aspire to be like an engineer in the future?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think number one, I would say believe in yourself. I cannot tell you how many times I was ready to drop my major. I I must have looked at every other option I could have done because it's hard. It's tough. And there are days where you just think maybe I can't do this, or like you have that little imposter syndrome in you, like, am I really capable of doing this? The truth is, yes, you are. You absolutely are. You almost always can. It just takes a little bit, whether it's, you know, another night of studying or a break, a walk, whatever it takes. Stop and tell yourself, yes, I can, because the truth is you can. I would bet 99% of the time you can figure out whatever you need to figure out. But there will be days that are tough. And I would say keep pushing, because I think the biggest regret in my life would have been changing my major. I didn't think that probably 3.5 of the 4 years that I was in school, actually I did 5, but that's a different story. I thought to myself, I don't know if I should be here. Like the kid next to me seems to get this and I have no idea what he's saying. But the truth is, if you stop and take the time to just try it, you'll get there. I guarantee it. And then don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I also think it's really important to find someone, whether it's another student or a professor or a teacher's assistant, who you can have those conversations with or lean on. I ended up my junior year, maybe my sophomore year, I took an optics course, which I was starting to like hit the edge of I don't think I can do this anymore. I'm probably going to change my major. And I took this physics course in optics, and it was with a professor that I had never had before. And he absolutely changed my path because he was willing to work with me in any setting. So instead of me being like, I really just don't understand this, I'm going to worry about something else. You know, I'll focus on this part of the course, or I'll get a 0 on that one question and I'll get the rest right. He would stop and be like, no, Gwen, let's talk this through. Let's figure this out. Where are these steps that you're missing? Which part of this doesn't make sense to you? And I was pretty antisocial in my major because it's intimidating, right? It just feels like everyone else knows this and you don't. I was always intimidated, and I didn't want to try and ask those questions or find those people. And he found me and he helped me out. But if I had tried to find him first, I probably would have been more successful from the start. Don't be antisocial. It's very intimidating. Everything about this career is very intimidating, but everyone is in the same boat, I promise. There might be one person that's just like elite, but.
Emily, you have a question?
Have you ever done like lenses for like those virtual reality things?
So those are, right now, that's our biggest client base. Most companies are coming to us with some sort of goggle design or some sort of imaging idea that they want to test out and see how it works. Right now, I think most of what we're experimenting with might be materials. So, you know, is it going to be a acrylic lens? Is it going to be some sort of weird rubbery plastic that they all have weird different names? I think they're all trying to figure out like what's going to be durable, but also image correctly. You know, like each material has a different refractive index. So you have to consider a bunch of different things. A lot of AI stuff, they want glass because it's pretty rigid and safe. But that's really hard. You can't bend glass. There's a million different ideas, but that's for sure going to be the future of at least my industry. It's starting to just become solely that. There's still aerospace stuff, and there's some defense contractors that are doing sort of the same thing. But I think that will be the future of my industry for sure.
Emily, you can just unmute. You don't have to raise your hand.
Okay. This is another one. Like while on the subject, what about like those like lenses for like those like huge like XD theaters where, if you know what I'm talking about, it's just like theaters where it's like 4D, but like you like interact with it.
Yeah, I haven't done anything specifically with that. I do feel like we will, but I think that the coronavirus has messed up everyone's funding, right? There's question marks all over the place, but I have a strong suspicion that that will start kicking in, and I think that would be really cool. I don't necessarily understand anything about 4D imaging, but I would like to learn, and that would be a cool thing to watch. You would get to see the tangible result, right? I'd get to go see a movie where I'd feel like I'm immersed in it. But I'm not there yet.
Now, you mentioned how the pandemic has affected your funding and everything. How has it affected how you're working from home? I'm sure you normally use a lot of fancy equipment. Are you working in person at home?
Yeah, so actually we're a fairly small company, and we ended up not really downsizing, but more just like streamlining everything. So I actually never worked from home. I don't do many Zoom calls, which is why this is like a whole new thing for me, because it's usually just me and like my team in the office. But we've all been pretty serious about being safe and like caring about each other, because we know we all have to be in the office. We just can't run the machines from home. So if one of us were to jeopardize that, it would cost us, 2 weeks of work, which is lame. And it's not that hard to not do. So we've all been pretty good about trying. I do know most of the companies we work with have sort of just been on a hold. There are a few exceptions, those in which their funding will never change. Giant corporations that just have too much money to begin with. But they're more interested in development for something 6 years down the road anyway. So they're not even really thinking short term. They're more of a long-term issue anyway. But I've been in the office this whole year, which is both good and bad. It's nice to go into work every day, but it's hard to watch all my friends stay at home. How has it been going to school? Are you guys all virtual? No.
Some of us are in person. Now we removed like hybrids pretty much. Those who are coming in student, our cohorts are now one giant cohort, but some of us are also just fully staying at home.
Wow.
Yeah.
The logistics of that seem pretty wild.
It is very wild, but overall not the worst experience. Honestly, things have gotten better since like the beginning of the year, and now everybody's somewhat used to this dynamic. Still a little awkward. Of course, there's gonna be hiccups, but everything's a learning process. So.
That's cool. I have a lot of respect.
You're all Zoom professionals from these meetings, right, guys? Eva agrees.
The silence indicates that it's a yes.
I see how it is. We can go back to Schoology conferences.
Oh, okay. No,
those were bad.
That was a whole experience. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that you're in a career like even like you're working on new things, you're learning new things, and I think that's really admirable, especially with a very difficult like subject such as engineering, and that's really cool. I don't know. I just think that any major or anything where you're not going to be stuck learning the same thing, you're always going to be learning new things, is something that you can take out of anything really. So
I tell most of my friends what I like a lot about my job is that every day is a little bit different. I'm not working on the same project for a year straight, mostly because my job is based on prototype development. So it's different often. There's a lot of, everyone's trying something new all the time. We're not a mass production shop. But having a little bit of a change every day is really helpful. It makes you excited to come to work and try something else out. Break something new.
Emily, did you have a question before? I thought I saw your hand.
Oh no.
Oh, I'm just imagining things. Sorry. While I'm unmuted, I guess I'll ask another question. So a lot of what we talk about here is how to be a woman in STEM. So have you ever had an experience that being a woman has made someone treat you differently or has given you a different perspective than anyone else?
Yeah, I want to start off by saying, first off, my boss is incredible. I don't think, sorry, my dogs just ran into the screen door. I don't think he for a second doubted my ability just because I'm a woman. In fact, he was probably more excited about that. And I want to say right off the bat, surround yourself with people like that, because he has made it clear to me I can do anything I want in this industry. And I don't have to listen to the people that when I call them as the head engineer on a job, they ask to speak to the head engineer. It's assumed when I call someone that I'm the secretary making a phone call, and I have to tell them, sorry, sir, it's me you're going to be speaking to about this, and it's only me. But that stuff happens. It's not the end of the world. It's starting to happen a lot less. There are people that immediately know or can recognize my intelligence just off of a conversation and then don't make those assumptions. And there are still people that will make those assumptions, and it can be frustrating, but it's happening less and less. And I think the key is to never doubt yourself. You're there for a reason. No matter what anyone says to me, I know that I know my stuff and I'll get through it. But it exists, it's dying out, and I hope it's dead by the time you guys are out of college.
That's really inspirational. I know a lot of people had to leave. They have lab with our new schedule changes. It's hard to coordinate meetings. So if anyone else has to go, you're welcome to go. Does anyone have any other questions that they want to ask?
I'd like to say you have a faculty advisor here still, so you guys can feel free as long as Ms. Paul is available. You can keep asking questions. I'll hang out so you guys don't have to rush, all right?
Thanks, Ms. Meigs. So does anyone have any other questions they want to ask?
Yeah, I could go off of the previous question. So in terms of like when you were in college, did you feel like you were discouraged because like there were a lot of like the ratio between like female and male in like the college setting in like engineering courses were like kind of like a big gap? So do you think that like kind of discouraged you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so I think in my graduating physics program class, I think there were 5 other women. There might have been 8 or 9, but I knew, or I regularly had classes with 3 that were also physics majors. I think they were physics ed, which only made them have to take more classes. I don't think it changed any of the coursework. But it was majority male. I will say that almost all of my male colleagues were great. They never once made me feel weird about being a woman. They never made me feel like I was inferior. I think that there can be a sense of pride that comes along with being a STEM person, and it can be projected in a manner that makes you feel like you don't belong there and they do. But I don't think it's often that people have that malice that you're a woman, you don't belong here, I'm better than you. I probably had 10 really close friends in my major, and they were all male, and I had 1 female friend. But I was a student athlete, so I didn't have a lot of friends in my major. I had friends on my team. And I think I probably regret that more now. I wish I had taken the time to be closer with some of those classmates, because they were all really great. But I was never intimidated by the males. You shouldn't be intimidating by them. They're not intimidating. They, most of the time, they're very nice. And some of the time they're mean, and then you just ignore them.
So thank you so much, Ms. Paul, for coming to speak with us today. I'm sure everyone really enjoyed. You had a lot of great advice and shared a lot of great information. And thank you, Ms. Mix, for helping us set up this interview.
Anytime. I'm glad. It was nice to see your face, Gwen. But,
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. You guys want to meet my dogs?
Thank you.
Let's go with
BJ!
the yes over here.
BJ!
Come here. Come say hi. Come. Say hi to me.
Hi.
Look over here. This is Finn. She just threw up on the deck, so I'm not going to let her kiss my face. She ate breakfast too fast. I saw it happen. It's a predictable result. Well, thank you very much for having me, you guys. I love that you have a women in STEM club. I wish I had something like this when I was growing up. I wish I had someone to tell me that you can do this, you will do this, you're very capable.
Thank you for being that human for this group of women who are hopefully in STEM, having taught a lot of you and being in school with a lot of you. I definitely would take what Ms. Paul says to heart. You guys can definitely do just about anything. I'm certain of it. So thank you very much.